Hey everyone, welcome back. Get ready because today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of LLMs.
Large language models?
Yeah, you know those AI systems that are like blowing everyone's minds these days.
They can do some pretty incredible things.
Right, like writing poems, composing music, even coding.
And it seems like every day they're getting even more powerful.
Exactly. But as they get more powerful, they also get more expensive to run.
You're talking about the inference costs.
Yeah, the computational resources it takes to actually use these LLMs.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big challenge, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a major bottleneck.
So that's where today's deep dive comes in. We're going to be looking at a research paper called BitNet a4.8, 4-bit activations for 1-bit LLMs.
Sounds a bit technical.
Yeah, it is. But trust me, it's super interesting. This paper is all about making LLMs more efficient, less resource hungry.
So trying to lower those inference costs?
Exactly. And to do that, they're using some pretty innovative techniques like, have you ever heard of a sparsification?
Yeah, I've come across it. It involves making the model's connections more sparse.
Right. Like trimming away the less important connections. So instead of processing everything, it focuses on the most crucial parts.
And that leads to some serious efficiency gains.
Exactly. And this paper actually builds on some previous research called BitNet b1.58, which also used sparsification, but in a different way.
So BitNet a4.8 is kind of like the next generation.
Yeah, it's like taking things to the next level. Now, I'm looking at figure 1 in the paper, and it shows the architecture of this new model. It's a hybrid approach.
Hybrid, so it's not just using one type of sparsification technique.
Right. They're combining different techniques. They're using 1.58-bit weights and then a mix of 4-bit and 8-bit activations, depending on which part of the model you're looking at.
Interesting. Why the different bit widths?
Well, the paper explains that the distribution of activations in LLMs is not uniform.
So some parts of the model are more active than others.
Exactly. And you can actually see this in figure 2. There are some parts with lots of activations clustered around 0, and then other parts with these outlier values.
And those outlier values, if you just quantize everything to lower bits, you could lose important details, right?
Right. That's why they use sparsification. It helps retain those critical outlier values while still reducing the overall number of bits used.
Makes sense.
So now let's dive into how they actually achieve this sparsification. In section 2.1, they describe a method called QSparse. Basically, it ranks the activations and then keeps the top K most important ones while quantizing the rest.
Like a VIP list for activations?
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop there. They also introduced another technique, ReLU2GLU, which is short for squared real U and gated linear unit.
Another mouthful.
Yeah, tell me about it. But it's pretty cool because it creates even more sparsity in the model, leading to further reductions in computational costs.
Wow, so they're finding sparsity in unexpected places?
Exactly. And you know what's even more fascinating? They observed that the gate part of the GLU itself is also sparse. It's like this chain reaction of efficiency gains.
So they're really squeezing out as much performance as possible while using minimal resources.
Exactly. Now, obviously, training a model with all these techniques is a bit more complex. The paper describes a two-stage process, starting with 8-bit activations and then moving to 4-bit.
And they also use techniques like straight-through estimator, STE, and mixed precision training. But I guess the main point is that they have a well-defined process for making it work.
Right. They didn't just throw these techniques together randomly. They put a lot of thought into the training process. And speaking of thought, they didn't limit themselves to just integer quantization either. They also explored using floating point, specifically FP4.
So they're really covering all the bases, huh?
They are. They're leaving no stone unturned in their quest for efficiency. Now, the big question is, does it actually work?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. Does BitNet a4.8 live up to the hype?
Well, let's dive into the results and find out.
All right, so we've talked about all these technical details, BitNet a4.8, sparsification, quantization. But before we go any further, I think it's worth asking, why? Why does any of this matter?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the technical stuff and forget about the bigger picture. Like, what's the real-world impact of this research?
Exactly. So let's take a step back and think about the implications.
Yeah, let's do that. Like, what does this mean for people who actually use LLMs, not just for the researchers who are developing them?
Right. I mean, if we can make LLMs more efficient, more affordable to run, that opens up a whole world of possibilities.
It's like democratizing AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making it accessible to a much wider audience.
Okay, I like where this is going. So how exactly does BitNet a4.8 achieve this?
Well, remember how we talked about the high inference costs being a major barrier?
Yeah, the computational resources needed to run these models.
Right. BitNet A4.8 directly addresses that. By making LLMs more efficient, they become cheaper to run. So it's not just about speed, it's also about affordability.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. And I'm guessing the researchers didn't stop there.
Oh, definitely not. They explored a whole range of techniques. Like, remember quantization? How we talked about representing information using fewer bits?
Yeah, like compressing a file to make it smaller.
Right. Well, they actually looked at different types of quantization. Integer quantization, which is simpler, and then floating point quantization, which is more flexible.
Okay, so they're experimenting with different approaches. What did they find?
They found that even when they used floating point quantization, specifically FP4, BitNet A4.8, still performed really well.
So it's adaptable.
Exactly. Section 2.3 of the paper talks about this. Their hybrid architecture is robust. It can handle different types of quantization.
That's impressive. Now, what about low bit attention? I remember you mentioning that earlier. It sounded pretty important.
Oh, yeah. Low bit attention, that's key for processing long sequences of information efficiently.
And that's essential for a lot of LLM tasks.
Absolutely. And in section 3.1, they explain how this low bit attention helps reduce the memory footprint and the I/O of something called KV cache.
KV cache, hold on, remind me what that is again?
Think of it as the model's short-term memory. It's how the LLM remembers previous parts of the text as it processes new information.
Right, right. So low bit attention makes this memory function more efficient.
Exactly. And they actually tested this. If you look at Table 3, it shows that even with some pretty aggressive quantization levels like 4-bit or even 3-bit, BitNet A4.8 maintains its accuracy for these attention components.
Wow, so even with those tight constraints, it's still delivering. That's pretty remarkable.
It is. And remember those ablation studies we mentioned?
The deep dive within the deep dive. Yeah, I remember. What did those show?
Well, sections 3.2 and 3.3 get into the nitty-gritty of how BitNet A4.8 is designed. They tested each component to see how it contributes to the overall performance.
Like taking apart an engine to see how all the pieces work together.
Exactly. And one of the things they focused on was the hybrid architecture, how they're combining different techniques. Figure 4 shows that this hybrid approach significantly outperforms other methods.
So the hybrid approach is not just a gimmick. It's actually a key part of what makes BitNet A4.8 so effective.
Absolutely. And then they also looked at the different activation functions they use, especially in the down projection of the FFN. Do you remember what those are?
Activation functions are like gatekeepers, right?
Yeah.
They decide which information gets passed on to the next layer.
You got it. And figure 5 shows that using squared RayLU in this part of the model leads to both better performance and more sparsity.
So again, it's about choosing the right tool for the job. Now, you mentioned earlier that they tested BitNet A4.8 on a larger model too. What was it, like 2 billion parameters?
Hmm. Yeah. And trained on a massive data set of 2 trillion tokens. The results. Really promising. Table 5 shows that even at this larger scale, BitNet A4.8 still performs comparably to the baseline model while enjoying all the benefits of 4-bit activation.
So it scales up. It's not just a theoretical concept.
Exactly. And to really drive that point home, they even analyzed the activation sparsity across different model sizes, which you can see in Table 2. For instance, their 7B model only has 3.4B active parameters thanks to sparsification. Think about how much smaller that is compared to the full model.
Wow. They're really achieving a lot with a little. But wait, there's more.
You bet there is. Remember top case sparsification, where they rank those activations and kept only the most important ones?
Yeah, the VIP list for activations.
Well, they applied that same idea to the output projection of the attention mechanism, and they found that even with a high sparsification level, like 50%, the performance didn't really suffer. Table 4 shows that.
So they're squeezing out even more efficiency without sacrificing accuracy. This is amazing.
It really is. They've really optimized this model from top to bottom. I mean, it's just incredible the level of detail they went into.
I know, it's mind-blowing. We've covered so much ground. Maybe we should take a quick breather, recap what we've learned, and then look ahead to the future of AI. All right, so we've gone pretty deep into the technical details of BitNet A4.8. We've looked at its architecture, how they use sparsification, and even how it performs on larger models.
It's been a pretty comprehensive deep dive.
Yeah, it has. But now I'm really curious about, like, the big picture stuff. What are the implications of this research? What does it all mean for the future?
That's the really exciting part, right? I mean, if BitNet A4.8 lives up to its potential, we could see some major changes in how LLMs are used.
Like, it could be a game changer.
Exactly. But before we get too carried away, maybe we should do a quick recap for our listeners.
Yeah, good idea. So what are the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, I'd say the main takeaway is that BitNet A4.8 offers a way to make LLMs much more efficient without sacrificing performance. They've shown that by combining 4-bit activations with these smart sparsification techniques, you can really reduce the computational costs.
And remember, those efficiency gains translate to real-world
Oh,
benefits.
absolutely. Think about it. Lower costs mean LLMs become more accessible to a wider range of people and organizations.
Yeah, like small businesses, startups, even individual developers.
Right. They could all start using LLMs for things that were previously out of reach because of the high computational demands.
Okay, now I'm really excited. What kind of impact could this have on different fields?
Well, imagine, for instance, healthcare. You could have LLMs helping with personalized treatment plans or assisting with diagnoses. Or, in education, imagine AI tutors that can adapt to each student's needs.
Wow. It's like something out of science fiction.
Yeah, it is. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We could see LLMs revolutionizing everything from scientific research to creative arts.
This is incredible. But, with great power comes great responsibility, right?
Absolutely. As LLMs become more powerful and more widespread, we need to be mindful of the ethical implications. We need to make sure they're used responsibly and that we address any potential biases.
Right. We don't want AI to perpetuate existing inequalities or to make decisions that could harm individuals or communities.
Exactly. So, yeah, it's important to proceed with caution and to have those ethical considerations in mind.
Okay, that's a good point. Now, before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about how this research could change how we interact with LLMs. What do you mean by that?
Well, imagine a future where LLMs are so efficient and so affordable that they're seamlessly integrated into all our devices and applications.
So we'd be interacting with AI constantly.
Yeah, pretty much. We could be talking to our devices naturally using LLMs to generate text, translate languages, you name it.
It's like having an AI assistant that's always there, ready to help.
Exactly. And BitNet A4.8 is a step toward making that vision a reality.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm super excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. It's definitely an exciting time to be following AI research.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of efficient LLMs. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
And until next time, stay curious.
Keep exploring. And remember, the possibilities are endless.